Unit 8, the developmental self. Section 1, the mind and the self. When Daniel Siegel, the developmental psychologist and researcher, addresses the question, what is the mind? He's very clear that it's a real entity. Unlike the heart, lungs, or brain, it can't be directly observed. But this doesn't mean that it's not just as real as these other human organs. Siegel is also very clear as to the function of the mind. Quote, "It governs the total organism and its interaction with the environment." End quote. He also describes the mind, quote, as a subjectively perceived functional entity based ultimately upon physical processes, but with complex processes of its own, end quote. Siegel further suggests that the central goal of the mind is to attempt to bring about the integration of experience across a lifetime. Quote, "We can have complex representations of sensations, perceptions, ideas, and linguistic symbols as we think, for example, of some time in the past. The integration of these distinct modes of information processing into a coherent whole may be the central goal for the developing mind across the lifespan." End quote. Siegel also insists that emotion is central and fundamental to this process of integration. Quote, "Emotion can be seen as the fundamental process of the mind that links states of arousal with the appraisal of the value or the meaning of its own representational processes. In this way, the mind's creation of representations provides us with insight into how reality is shaped by emotional and interpersonal processes. Our internal experiences are constructive processes. Our interpersonal relationships help shape the ways in which these representational processes develop. Emotion can thus be seen as an integrating process that links the internal and interpersonal worlds of the human mind." End quote. The quality of an individual's interpersonal relationships, especially during early childhood, are, according to Siegel, crucial to the process of trying to integrate coherence of experience. Quote, "Interpersonal relationships may facilitate or inhibit this drive to integrate a coherent experience. Relationships early in life may shape the very structures that create representations of experience and allow a coherent view of the world. Interpersonal experiences directly influence how we mentally construct reality. This shaping process occurs throughout life, but is most crucial during the early years of childhood. Patterns of relationships and emotional communication directly affect the development of the brain." End quote. The self emerges during early infancy as a product of the mind's efforts to integrate its experience. Siegel quotes Alan Schroff's definition of the self, quote, as an internally organized cluster of attitudes, expectations, meanings, and feelings. In his view, the self emerges from an organized caregiving matrix that in part determines how the individual responds to and engages with or avoids the environment. Relationships also determine how children interpret experience, end quote.